Okay, good morning, everybody. As we continue on in our Maamer LoSihiyeh Mishakela full devotion, we are currently in one of my favorite parts of the Maamer, and I hope everybody enjoyed yesterday's shir because it's one of the concepts that I live with the most in my life. I'm a huge, clearly believer, because I'm talking about in the Maamer says it in of itself. I didn't make this stuff up, but I really live my life, or I try to live my life with this concept of the bottom, the basis of our avodah is to know that we have to do what's right. We have to realize that Eibishter is the King of all kings. He created us, and due to that, we need to do our part. We need to do what's right and be, that's the minimum. But in reality, we can't live on that level. We can't survive living that way, and it's not the healthiest. There, that's better. It's not the healthiest way of living, which means, and it shows us that we need to work to get to the next level. We can't just say, okay, I became from, or even if you were born from, and your family, you grew up from, you still have to make that conscious decision to follow through and make that a part of your life, whether you're married or not. You still have to choose to keep that if that's what you want. So you can't just stay in okay, this is just what I do because this is what I do, and I grew up with it, or this is just what I do because I chose to live this life. In reality, we have to take it to the next level and say, okay, how do I turn this into a true love and appreciation for what Judaism is meant to be, and finding out those particular mitzvahs that we sometimes struggle with, or we don't fully understand, and we have a hard time with it, and working on our understanding, and working on creating those emotions of love and appreciation for those mitzvahs, and it'll help us. So that's one of the reasons why when we're doing this program, a lot of the resources that I gave last week, speaking of Mitzvah Hashem, we're going to be having a Farang tonight. I'm just waiting to hear back from the speaker so I can officially announce it. But anyway, so one of the reasons why, one of the resources that I gave the most about was learning. If you're working on your davening, so then you should also learn about it. If you're working on chitas, and you should learn something about it. Make it an enjoyable part of your life, as opposed to just forcing yourself into doing things just because it's the right thing to do. Okay, so here we are on page 50, and we're taking this even further. So I want to give So I want to give an introduction, because at one point we're going to discuss tanning hides. And it's funny because I've heard about it, because there's plenty of discussion about this topic, whether it's Hayemim. I'm pretty sure there's a whole Hayemim about it. There's also a discussion about it here in this Maamer, and I regret it, but I decided, you know what, I need to know what I'm talking about before I talk about it. So I did a Google search on what are the steps in order to tan hides. A hide, for anyone who doesn't understand what I'm talking about, is the skin that gets taken off of an animal, and then afterwards they do a whole process to turn it into something. So some people turn it into leather, and those are like leather shoes, or leather siddur, and all these things. Other people, or other parts of the hide, or other parts of different types of animals, or hides of different animals, or whatever, actually get turned into what we use on a Mitzvah Hashem very soon. We'll be back to using on a regular basis, which is the scroll of a Torah. So I decided, Chassidus talks about tanning hides. Boy, oh boy, do I regret that. Well, it is a very intense, laborsome and kind of gross whole process. But now that we know that it takes many, many steps, and it takes a lot of different, it's hard. You can't, it's not the simplest thing to do. So now that we know that, and now that we have that context, let's get into the Maamer, because the Maamer actually speaks about it. Okay, we're on page 50. We're on the section that says tough love. And just so we follow through with the thought process of yesterday what we said was that when we daven, we connect our nefesh elokis with its source. We're able to, it's kind of like plugging the phone into the charger, right? We like recharge the nefesh elokis. That said, that charger only works, the connection to the charger only works if the nefesh elokis is doing what Hashem wants it to do. And we know that Hashem, what's the entire purpose for the nefesh elokis to come down here? The nefesh elokis doesn't need refinement. It's already perfect. It's a perfect piece of God that comes down into our bodies, into our world. So what is it that the soul, the nefesh elokis, the godly soul, comes here to do? What's its entire purpose? It's to come here and transform the nefesh bahamis. It's to convince the nefesh bahamis of all of its good things, all the good things that it's meant to do, and convince it to do that instead of the negative or lazy or complacent or whatever traits that the nefesh bahamis naturally has. Okay, so once it's doing the right thing, meaning the nefesh elokis is convincing, it's speaking to the nefesh bahamis and telling it, look how amazing this Torah mitzvahs are. Right? So anybody who's been to a Chabad house, you don't usually walk in and, get smacked over the head with a chumash and get told, you got to do the right thing. You got to do the right thing. What's wrong with you? That's not how we get treated. So too here, we shouldn't treat our nefesh bahamis with the, anger and self-destructive, like you're such a terrible person, chas v'shalom. We should treat it just like a shliach treats a new person who walks in with a lot of love, and we welcome it, and we try to explain to it the beauty of Judaism and the beauty of loving the Eibusher and all these good things. Okay, so that's the process of what the nefesh elokis has to do in order to be doing the right thing, in order to overturn, in order to then when we're davening, we're able to plug into that, and our nefesh elokis gets this like boost of inspiration because we're connecting to our source. Okay. Another point to explain why serving Hashem out of awe alone does not suffice, and why one must also serve Hashem out of love, is as follows. The word avodah, which means, our avodah, the things we work on, is related to the word ibud, as in ibud oris, or arot. 1 second. Oris, which means tanning hides. Okay, so the word avodah has a relationship to ibud, which is to tan hides. Just as tanning calls for a number of activities that require intense exertion until the hide becomes suitable for parchment for writing, so must one's service of Hashem involve labor and the exertion of tremendous effort. Right? So it's not just, and this is very much a Chabad Chassidus type of thing. We realize that to make long-term change, we have to not just do step by step. Don't just, take on the whole world in one shot. We have to do step by step, work on ourselves little by little. And not only that, but we have to work hard. It's a process that we need to work on, and we need to put into effect step by step, little changes, but those little changes add up to a lot of work. From this, it is understood that serving Hashem out of awe is not the ultimate form of service, since serving Hashem out of awe does not necessarily involve labor and the exertion of effort. For as mentioned previously, some people possess a natural fear of heaven. Therefore, one must also serve Hashem out of love, since serving Hashem out of love can only be a result of labor and effort, right? So for example, for many of us, it's much easier to get ourselves freaked out about, chas v'shalom, if I don't do this, or not me, but somebody could say, if that person doesn't do that, they can go to hell, and it's much easier to get fear to push us to do the right thing. But here we're saying that's not the purpose. We're not here to force ourselves to do the right thing just because we're freaking ourselves out that if we don't do it, we're gonna, get punished or any of those things. The Chabad Chassidus perspective is more of an overturning. We're convincing our nefesh bahamis. We're speaking to it lovingly. We're bringing that love. We're bringing that appreciation for the mitzvah. That's why there's Maamer upon Maamer upon Maamer about every single mitzvah under the world, or every single you name it, whatever it is. There's tefillin, there's tzitzis, there's women's, there's marriage, there's all kinds of these things, because we're trying to convince and loving and create this love within our nefesh bahamis to love doing Torah mitzvahs. Love and awe. It is now understood that the pasuk, and you shall serve the Lord your God, refers to both the service of Hashem with awe, which is the beginning, right? That's the minimum. If we don't have that, all that love and all that, it's going to turn into like the hippie era, and we're all going to be all loving and whatever. We have to have that bottom line of, at the end of the day, I need to work as hard as possible to do the right thing. Whether I love it or not, I have to try my hardest to do the right thing. That's the minimum. Once we have that minimum, and to the serve, meaning once we have that minimum, then we can expound. We can work on that and say, okay, now that I know that I'm gonna daven, regardless of whatever's happening in my life, now let me learn how to love davening. All right, this is one example. I mean, it could be with anything in your life. Both the service of Hashem with awe, which is the beginning of godly service, and to the service of Hashem with love. So it is explained in Kuntres HaAveda that the ultimate service of Hashem incorporates both awe and love. Okay, so I wish one day we could do Kuntres HaAveda. It's intense stuff, but one day, Mitzvah Hashem, we could. I would love to do that. Okay, now we finished Eis Zayin. So Mazel Tov, Kol HaKavod to everybody. Before we enter Eis Ches, I want to give some background and some commentary. Okay, so let's take back one step into the Maamer, right? So we started, Eis Aleph was with an introduction of these psukim, right? That when we do the right thing, we're going to get blessings in parnasa, in good health and long life, and then in children, right? So we said if we do the right things, then we're going to get blessings. Then in the second one, we said, okay, what does it mean to do the right thing? What does it mean avoda? What does it mean to serve Hashem? Like a servant serves a master. But then we're left with a question, one second, if the master needs something, then that's when the servant does it, he feels fulfilled. How can we possibly say that about Hashem? Well, we can't say that our master needs anything. Hashem is perfect, right? So it leaves us with a very intense question, and it even brings in psukim to prove how that is so. Then, in our third section, our third chapter, we go into and we explain the entire form. Where'd my paper go? Okay, I have to find my paper. Of Seder Ishtalshus, right? And we explained all a certain level of Seder Ishtalshus. It got a little smushed, but it's here, I found it. We explained all of this, and we said, to a certain extent, we do make an effect on Hashem, but to another extent, we don't. And then we went back on Eis Daled. We said, okay, one second, let's go back into the psukim. In the psukim, at some points, it talks about a third-person narrator, and at some points, it talks about a first-person narrator. But we know that Atzmos U'Mahosein Soif is the first-person narrator, right? So as you can see here, it's the essence of Hashem speaks about what's going on in relationship with the aspect of Hashem that's in Seder Ishtalshus, right? So God, the author is talking, and it talks about how God speaks to Moshe, right? And how Moshe hears it, etc. Which means that a certain sense, and in the pasuk itself, it says that I, meaning the author himself, the narrator himself, is going to bless us, which means that there is some sort of relationship between Atzmos and Mahosein Soif, which is the essence of Hashem, which supposedly we have no relationship to. So there is some sort of relationship between Atzmos and Mahosein Soif to us down here in the world, which showed us that we do make an effect on Hashem, and we do, to whatever extent, when we do the right things, we do affect not just Hashem in the sense of who He is in the lower levels, but also the essence of Hashem. So we do matter. Our time matters, and the way we connect to Hashem matters, and what we do with our lives matters. So we are here in this world because we matter. Then we spoke about So that was Hey. Then Vav, we had to understand how do we connect to Hashem, right? So that we started being a little bit more practical, not just like the ideas and the concepts of relationship to Hashem, but also what does that mean in our lives? And we discussed at the basis of Avodah is Kabbalah soul. That was Vav, and how important it is to have this level that Eibusher puts us here. So therefore, we need to do the right thing. That this is our job. What do you mean? That's what we're here for. And then we finished a whole section on that Kabbalah soul. As much as that's the basis of the Avodah, that can't be where it ends. It has to be grown, and it has to be contemplated, and it has to be worked on to create an emotion and to create love and to really have that love and that inspiration and that appreciation for Hashem. Okay, so the reason I had to go back is because now in Ches, we're going to go back and try to re-answer the question. Remember, I spoke about this at the beginning in our introduction, that Chassidus, a lot of my Maamer and a lot of Sichos, the way it works is that it presents a question. It goes in and explains a lot of concepts which change our life. The concepts in the middle, that's the juicy stuff, it changes our perspective and it changes our lives. And then we have to go back into the question and try and answer with this newfound perspective that we just gained, right? So now we're going to begin that process. We're not going to go fully into it, but we're going to go back into looking at the psukim and what that means for us. So I want to remind everybody that part of the brachas that we get is that none shall miscarry or be barren, right? So we're going back into the original pasuk. We're going to reanalyze a bit of that pasuk or the psukim, and then we're going to understand it. Again, we're going to work to understand it better, so we're able to understand what this whole thing means. That's introduction number 1 to this whole concept. Introduction number 2 to this whole concept is that in Tanya, and many of you have taken my Tanya course, so I'm sure you know this already, but just in case, I want to do a refresher. That in Tanya, we speak a lot about how intellect comes before the emotions, right? So our thought process is what creates our emotions. So for example, if we take, let's say you meet someone for the first time, right? You know very little about them. You don't know their background. You don't know, as much as you can get to know them, it's just a minuscule amount of what their full life potential, and not life potential, but like life history is all about, right? So being that at the beginning you have very little knowledge, your intellect, your intellectual capacity to think about that person is very small. So therefore, can you possibly love someone in such a deep level at that point in time? No. You can enjoy their company. You can say, hey, there's a lot of potential for us to be friends. And there's a lot of potential, or even let's say in a shidduch date, the first few dates, all you're doing is trying to get to know the person so you can see if there's a potential for you to have an appreciation and have like a bonding with this person. So too with awe, do you feel like you respect that person, that, they walk in the room and you feel a sense of awe? Wow, such an incredible person just walked into the room. I really, I should sit up a little more straight. I should work on my, on myself to be, to represent myself properly, because this, really great person just walked in. Do you have that? No, not yet, not necessarily. So the way that it works is that the more you know the person, the more intellectual grasp you have of the person, the more you're able to give birth to the emotions that follow through. So the more you get to know someone, hopefully, even when you get to know the parts of them that are not so perfect, you can appreciate them and you can say, okay, that person is not so perfect, and he or she has imperfections, but I can love them and I can have respect for them even with those imperfections, because I see how much they've grown, or I see how, or in general, how I feel about the word perfect. It is it's a bad word in my vocabulary, at least, because it doesn't exist. So to here, our appreciation for somebody, or for anything for that matter, is grown. Our love and our fear and our awe towards somebody or something is grown by the intellect. The more we think about the thing, the more we understand it, the more we are capable of processing what that means in our lives or how we connect to that person, the more we're able to feel the emotions. So who are the parents? The parents here that shape and give birth to something else are the intellectual aspects. The more you know, the more you're able to feel. So the parents are the intellect, and the feelings, the emotions are the children. And it discusses this in Tanya and in many other places in Chassidus. Okay, so we have a few minutes. We'll just get started and then, yeah. Okay, spiritual children. To clarify that the type of service that is alluded to in the pasuk, and you shall serve the Lord your God, the pasuk continues, none shall miscarry nor be barren. The definition of barren is that one lacks the ability to bear children. Children being the characteristics of love and awe, which are born of contemplation, right? So somebody, chas v'shalom, in spiritual terms, somebody, chas v'shalom, who's barren, it means that they lack the ability to create love and awe. So I'm sure there's many times, myself included, that I go and I learn something and it seems so deep that I'm not able to psychologically, or intellectually grasp it. It doesn't make sense to me. And because it doesn't make sense to me, by the time I close the book, I'm not necessarily in love with the book, nor I have, wow, I have awe towards the concepts in the book at all, because I didn't have the capabilities, intellectual capabilities, to understand and grasp what was being said. And so therefore I wasn't able to give birth, so to speak, to the emotional children. In this analogy, love is characterized as a son and awe as a daughter. Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we'll go and we'll read the footnotes about why, whatever, but it doesn't really matter in relation to the greater perspective of the Maamer. Miscarriage, quote unquote, means that one gives birth to children, but they have no continuity. The pasuk thus instructs, none shall miscarry or be barren. That contemplation should be practiced in such a manner that it gives birth to emotions, and that the emotions should have continuity, since only then will the requirement of you shall serve the Lord your God be suitably fulfilled. Okay? What does this mean? What we're saying is that, remember in the beginning of the Maamer, we said that it's both a promise and a directive, right? So none shall miscarry or be barren. On the one hand, it means we should do our part, that we should not miscarry and we should not be barren. On the other hand, Hashem promises that as long as we do our part towards that, He will make a promise that we shall not miscarry nor be barren. Okay, so now we understood that that be barren means that we need to contemplate. We need to, and it's funny because I've recently been having a discussion with somebody about hisbaininus. This is contemplation, meditation, contemplation, hisbaininus. It's the same stuffs. Okay, so I've been having a farbrengen with somebody who's been asking about what's the story and what's with mindfulness and all of that stuff, and what is Chassidic perspective on meditation. This is meditation. Meditation means, or contemplation, meditation in this word, in this sense, hisbaininus, we're going to call it hisbaininus, is taking the time to focus your intellectual aspects on something. That way it gives birth to emotions. It gives birth to an excitement. It gives birth to a fear. It gives birth to an awe. It gives birth to whatever you're trying to create. And therefore, the more you invest in thinking about it. So let's say you're feeling confused about the shir today, and you go and you reread inside, or you re-listen to the recording later on YouTube, right? So the more you invest in the intellectual aspect, the more you'll be able to get excited and give birth. So for example, when I learned this Maamer, it must have been, the first time, it must have been probably 8-9 years ago. And every single time I relearn it, I get more of an appreciation, and it creates more of an excitement because I have more of the intellectual aspect of it. So I'm able to hisbainin on it. I'm able to meditate on it. I'm able to think about it more deeply, and therefore it creates the desired result. Okay, we're gonna finish here. Tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, and this is, I gave you guys a heads up. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to do part of the Maamer in here. So in case you have it, you can bring it along, because I feel like the translation is a little bit more clear for this particular section. And tomorrow we're going to discuss more in depth what it actually means in the sense of our Avodah. What does it mean to miscarry? What does it mean to be barren? And how to understand them in order to, within our own selves, prevent it. So that will be tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.